Hello everybody, I am Carefree Brony, and today I will be doing a dramatic reading of the story known as Dark Rites, written by a good friend of mine named Spork Bacon. Chapter 1.
Trutsville city limits, eh?
I said when I read the sign aloud. I looked backwards at my hometown. It still looked so peaceful even though a few hours ago a primary demon had destroyed the inside of my house. Luckily, my father had soundproofed the inside of the house. With some luck, I could get at least a town over before any pony ever came looking for me and investigated the crime scene. I sighed and continued walking. After another 12 miles, I decided it was time to rest my hooves for a bit. It was beginning to get dark and my eyelids were heavy from lack of sleep. I found a crystal clear, sparkling lake next to a shady tree. I sat next to the tree under the shade and decided to read one of the books I had retrieved from my basement. I figured I had better look up the information on demons, considering I would probably be fighting them on a daily basis. I opened my pack and took out an old, ragged, and thin tome. The title was simply Demons. On the front of the book was an angry-looking demon being speared through the torso with a magically levitated spear. The pony that was levitating the spear looked like my father, but I assumed it was just a coincidence. It was a good enough place to start, given my basic knowledge of demons. I telekinetically flipped open to the first page. Quickly, I discovered that it was, in fact, a personal journal written by my father. Realizing that, I flipped quickly back to the cover. I brushed the dust off the bottom with my hoof, revealing the author and the rest of the title. I had not known my father kept a journal. It was clear on the hardcover, though, Demon Lore, by Andrew Darkheart. Flipping back to the first journal entry, I discovered that he had been a demon hunter longer than I thought. Immediately, I thought back to how old he was. He had married my mother at a fairly old age. Here he was, slaying demons before he had any thoughts of marriage.
Barely older than me,
I thought to myself. I felt suddenly excited. Reading that greatly improved my confidence of becoming the next in line demon hunter. Skimming his journal for useful information, I came across a rough sketch of a demon autopsy. It seemed that demon body structures are completely different from ponies. We have some of the same organs, at least, that's what it seemed like. The description of the organs themselves were smudged with age. Sinking further against the tree, I continued looking at the picture on the musty page. Thankfully, the organs were color-coded in the top left corner. I saw what the colors meant. A chart of all the colors and their meanings were displayed there. Looks like the red were vital organs. Blue was an organ a demon could live without. The yellow lines within the drawings were nerve endings. And the green organs were the control centers for bodily functions, such as movement, and in some cases fire breath, lightning breath, acid production, and the like. I had no idea that demons were so complicated. Being from a small town, my education wasn't all that great. I mean, we had the basics, like how Celestia is the princess and how she raises the sun and moon every day. But anatomy, biology, science, and the topics like that I had to learn on my own. Most of them being self-taught from my dad's personal library. Vaguely, I recall a huge page from a book entitled Dragon Anatomy. They were oddly similar to demons, as far as I could tell. They both had scales, the organs were mostly in the right places, tails, spikes, and frightening appearances. I wondered to myself if demons and dragons were related somehow. After I finished memorizing the diagram, I flipped to the next page. There were some notes referring to the previous diagram, the description of some of the other organs that had not fit on the previous page. Techniques about how to disable organs using specific holds and aiming for certain areas. I mentally cataloged the notes as I continued through to the next page. It was almost nighttime at this point. I channeled energy into my horn to make a light source, then continued reading. Most of the journal was my father knowing specific demons, their anatomy, and how to kill them. I skipped through the lesser demons until I found a section labeled Primary Demons. I dog-eared the page and closed my eyes for a second. Learning how to kill beings of such immense power could wait until after I have had a quick snooze. I tried to concentrate on what had happened, but my stomach broke my train of thought. Remembering that I had not eaten for over 8 hours, and had not slept for over 20 hours, suddenly hit me. Sighing, I looked around. Nothing edible in sight. Looking up, I discovered that I was sitting under a pear tree the entire time. Grasping at the ripe pear with my magic, I pulled it off the tree, hovered it to my mouth, and took a big bite. The pear was juicier than I expected. A sweet smell filled my nostrils as I took another bite. I swallowed the chunks down and savored the flavor as I took another bite.
This is the strangest tasting pear I've ever tasted,
I thought to myself. Turning the fruit over on my hoof, I realized that it was clearly not what I thought it was. It was a teardrop-shaped blue fruit with sticky green color showing where I had been in it. Instantly, I stopped chewing. Unexpectedly, I couldn't breathe. I felt my legs fall limply against the ground. A short time later, I felt my eyelids close. The next thing I saw was a dark, vaguely pony-shaped figure hovering over me. Then I blacked out. I woke up to the warm sunlight on my face about 6 hours later. "Ah, good. You're finally awake," some pony said to me with a voice I instantly didn't trust. Remembering that I had lost all feeling in my legs, I tried to move them. They moved slightly under the covers. I guess that fruit was something to avoid. I found that I had been in bed. Where had this pony moved me? A sudden image struck through my mind. It was like a catalog entry of a book on herbs and plants. A voice manifested in my mind, along with the data entry. "Pear fruit," it said. "A blue teardrop-shaped fruit that paralyzes whomever consumes the sticky green inside," it continued. "Commonly seen near lakes, this fruit grows on trees and should be avoided at all costs." I knew this voice, slightly chastising, motherly, and tender. Then realizing that this was my mother talking to me from within, I quietly listened to the description of the fruit. "Used mainly as a poison for weapons, a natural painkiller, and to induce a patient into sleep. This fruit is coveted for its medical uses."
Learned that the hard way.
I sighed to myself. "What was that? Do you want to say something?"
No.
I slurred quickly, then opened my eyes to look at my captor. The stallion in front of me was light gray, had a black mane with gray streaks through it, styled like an old pony that wanted to keep up with the times. His tail was cut short, but still black, streaked with gray just like his mane. He also had a beard, nice and curly, flowing from his chin. From just looking at him, I could tell he was about middle age. He was wearing a brown country-style hat that was clearly his favorite, holes and tears strewn through it. He was also wearing a plain vest with a white undershirt. His cutie mark was a picture of a pint of cider. What surprised me is that he was wearing a concerned, yet inviting expression on his face. Suddenly, I regretted thinking that his voice was something that couldn't be trusted. Maybe it was because my parents had just died and I was feeling a little bit paranoid.
"So, who are you?"
I said slowly, the fruit's effect wearing off enough that I could communicate. "Ah, don't be like that. You should recognize your favorite uncle. It's me, Spellflash, your Uncle Joel." Squinting my eyes slightly, I realized it was him. I have not seen him in over 5 years. He must have brought me to his old farm. I guess he found me passed out next to the lake while he was on his late-night walk. I was lucky that it had been him instead of a crazy demon. I rubbed my eyes, suddenly saddened by the thought of forgetting a relative. My thoughts jumped to the note that I had found with my new outfit. It had said, "Tell every relative about my parents' death."
"Uncle Joel, I have terrible news,"
I practically shouted at him. "Now, hang on there a second. Hold your horses. Calm down and tell me what you need to tell me." I breathed in deeply and calmly exhaled.
"My parents are dead."
I told him without emotion. "Your parents? Oh, that's too bad. Your pappy was the best demon hunter I have ever had the pleasure to meet. I suppose he left you without a letter in case one of his spells went awry." I nodded. "Ah, well, I suppose you should come with me then. I've a few tricks to learn ye." He turned to walk away out of the room. But before he turned, however, I saw a slight tear in his eye at the thought of his brother's magic finally getting the better of him. Slowly I followed him. I looked around and saw my satchel, the stack of books, and my boots in the corner. Knowing that it was safe, I followed him through the door and down the stairs into the wide living room with him standing in the middle. He gestured towards the door, which I assumed was the basement, considering that's where all the demon hunters keep their gear. We stepped through the door and I was welcomed with the familiar smell of herbs, demons, and undeath, just like my father's basement. End of Chapter 1.